Welcome back, friends. My name is Priscilla, New York-based flight attendant working with a major US airline company. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button real quickly to support the channel. Give the video a thumbs up and share this video. First things to note, this individual is a second-year flight attendant and their second-year pay right now with the airline that they work for is $41.65. Secondly, our layover pay, I believe, is about a little over $3 right now per hour. Flight attendant pay consists of layover pay and your hourly pay, which is multiplied by your flight time pay. If you want the full gist about flight attendant pay, I do have a playlist that consists of all the videos that I have done talking about flight attendant pay into detail in the description box below. The schedule value that was set for March was actually 80 hours plus or minus a 7-hour variance. What that means, if you're considering being a flight attendant or you don't understand, is that essentially compared to somebody who works a full-time job who's expected to be scheduled 160 hours a month to be full-time, with flight attendants, our schedule values or how much we can potentially be scheduled automatically by the system is set monthly, right? So for the month of March, it's going to be 80 hours plus or minus 7 hours, which means that potentially the minimum you can be scheduled for the month of March 2026 is 80 hours minus 7 hours, which puts you at 73 hours. And the maximum you can be scheduled for is 80 hours plus 7 hours, which puts you at 87 hours. And you are considered full-time. The bid period or the period for which March is covered is between 2nd March, 31st of March. The reason why it's 2nd March is because 1st March was considered part of February's bid period. What did this person ask for? So the first thing that this person asked for or did essentially was to waive their release to report time, which means they were willing to be scheduled a trip the same day they get released from a trip. So let's say I work a 2-day trip and I get released on Tuesday. When I waive this rule, what I'm telling the system is that feel free to schedule me another trip on that Tuesday that I got released from my initial trip. Secondly, they bid for a schedule value of 55 hours. So one thing to note is that although a schedule value will be set for all flight attendants for each bid month, you do have the ability to ask for the amount of hours that you actually want to work. There's no guarantee that you're going to be given that. The third request that they had was a commuter bid of 1. So they bid that whatever the system does, whatever hours or trips that the system gives them, they bid that they should be set up such that their trips allows them or makes it possible for them to only have to come to their base once. People who bid commuter bids are typically commuters. Even when I wasn't a commuter, I was bidding a commuter bid because I wanted my trips to be stacked such that I can get either the top part of the month off or the bottom part of the month off. So once again, in light of the flexibility that I keep talking about, we do have the ability to bid for our days off, and this person actually bid to have the 21st to the 31st of March off. They also wanted specifically 5th March off. The next thing they bid for was the legs or the amount of flights they wanted to work per duty day. They requested that the system avoid scheduling them any trips that had them working 3 to 4 flights a day, all per duty day. They requested for high credit trips, whether it was 1-day trips, 2-day trips, or 3-day trips. They also wanted to avoid all domestic trips. This is a bid that personally I do, not necessarily because I don't want to work domestic trips, because some domestic trips can be money makers. However, one of these days, the system is gonna assume that I'm senior enough to hold international trips, and I will be ready to take it all. A girl can dream, right? They asked for specific layovers. The next thing is they bid to avoid Atlanta and some other layovers. So they bid to avoid being scheduled on any Boeing 717 aircraft. So the next thing this person bid for was to avoid flight lead. I bid this as well, not necessarily because I don't want to work flight lead. I would just want to have the ability to choose which trips I work lead on. So I would rather be more willing to pick up a lead trip than to be automatically assigned a lead trip. They bid to avoid flying through Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, Miami, and Tampa. When I was based in Seattle, they were money makers for me. So I have a love-hate relationship with the Florida layovers or airports. I understand why this person bid to not fly through to not fly through there. Trust me, if you know, you know. So lastly, they bid for specific rotations. The release to report rule that they waived was held. The schedule value they asked for was 55 hours. They were not given 55 hours. They were actually given more than that. For the commuter bid of 1, that was not held. As you can see based on the image on the screen, they were actually given trips such that they were going to be forced to come to base twice. The next thing were their days off. So they actually got their day off request, which was 5th March. They were were granted that day off. The 25th to the 21st were the ones that was not held. The next thing were the amount of flights they wanted to fly in a day. They were denied once, which means at some point they were given a trip that had 3 or 4 flights in a day. They wanted high credit 1, 2, 3 day trips, so that was granted for them. All their trips were above the hours, the minimums that they set. All the trips that they were assigned were all domestic trips. The specific layovers that they asked for, they were not assigned any of the layovers. That was completely not granted. Avoiding Atlanta and other layovers, that was granted. The next thing was to avoid flying on the Boeing 717. That request was granted. And also avoid flying flight lead, that was granted as well. They also asked to not be scheduled to fly through Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, Miami, Tampa, Florida in general, and that was granted as well. Lastly, with regards to the specific rotations that they asked for, they were not senior enough to hold it, so they weren't assigned it. So as you can see, although they had all these requests, they were not granted some of them. But comparing their schedule requests for March and February, I believe that they were given a lot more in March compared to February. One last thing that I forgot to talk about, which is so important, guys, their A days, their reserve days. We actually get 6 days of reserve every month, unlike other airlines where you get the entire month for years, for as long as you're junior enough to hold reserve days or A days. So this individual actually asked that their reserve days, first of all, they asked for the 6-day block. So you can ask for, even though it's 6 days, you can ask for 2 sets of 3 days, and they asked for the full 6-day block, and they wanted it to start March 8th, and they were granted. So with regards to the trip types, so as you can see on the screen, they were actually scheduled 2 3-day trips and 1 2-day trip, right? And the bid period, once again, was for March 2nd to March 31st. And based on the amount of trips that they had and when they are working those trips, they had 16 days off total. Although this was what this person was scheduled for, it does not necessarily mean that they're going to keep their schedule as is. It does not necessarily mean that they are going to work these trips specifically. It does not necessarily mean that these are the only trips that they are going to work. So keep that in mind. We do have the flexibility to be able to swap with the system or with other flight attendants. Let's talk about the credit and the monetary value, starting off first with the credit. So with the 3-day trip that they had scheduled between the 2nd of March to the 4th of March, that 3-day trip is worth 16 hours and 15 minutes. Remember, in their bid, they did not want their 30-day trips to be anything below 16 hours. Their reserve obviously is by default. Each day is worth 4 hours and 45 minutes. That does not necessarily mean that you're only on duty for 4 hours and 45 minutes. Our reserves are 246. So you're supposed to be on call for 24 hours in a day, 6 days, okay? And that's worth 28 hours and 30 minutes for the entire 6 days. They get a couple of days off, and then on the 25th to the 26th, they do have a 2-day trip, and then they have a 3-day trip that starts on the 28th of March to the 30th of March. So the 2-day trip is worth 11 hours and 10 minutes, and the last 3-day trip is worth 17 hours and 16 minutes. So in total, for the bid period of March, they were scheduled for 73 hours and 11 minutes. They actually wanted 55 hours, so obviously that was not held for them, and they still had 16 days off. First of all, the 3-day trip they had on the 2nd to the 4th of March is worth $864.48. Remember, this person is a second-year flight attendant, and their hourly pay is currently sitting at $41.65. The monetary value for these trips only include their layover pay and their hourly pay, and this does not include board and pay. The reserve period for the 6 full days has a monetary value of $1,187.04. Next, we have the 2-day trip on the 25th to the 26th, which is worth $573.17. And lastly, the 3-day trip on the 28th to the 30th of March is worth $913.59. Okay, so what is the grand total? So based on this individual schedule for March 2026, they were scheduled for 73 hours and 11 minutes. And the monetary value of a schedule is $3,538.28, and they get 16 days off. Once again, like I said, They are not obligated to work these specific trips. They are not obligated to work these specific days. We do get the flexibility of being able to swap our trips around to make it as flexible as possible. Okay, so since we're at the end of today's video, I did want to leave you all with a tip for new flight attendants or new hires, or somebody who is considering becoming a flight attendant. When you do get on the line and you get to the point where you have to bid for your trips, I get it. We have so many dreams, we have so many desires, but my tip for today schedule video is that try to be as minimalistic as possible, right? I will say, when you're bidding as a new flight attendant, make your main focus be more dependent on your days off and when you want your reserve days to start. I feel like sometimes when you ask for so much, you potentially end up shooting yourself in the foot by canceling out your request or canceling out your bids. That said, thank you for watching today's video, and I would definitely see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.